10 massive movies just dropped, and while some are absolute home runs, others are, well, a complete mess. Today on Filmflix, I'm cutting through the hype to tell you exactly what's worth your time and what you should skip. I'm not gonna pretend everything here is a masterpiece. Honestly, a couple are genuinely hard to watch, but every single one of them is worth talking about. Okay, now let's get into it.
That's all you got? That's all you got?
First up, I want to start with something that's going to be a mixed bag for a lot of you, and I think that's worth being upfront about. The Punisher: One Last Kill is a 48-minute special built to bridge Frank Castle's story between Daredevil Born Again and Spider-Man Brand New Day, and you can genuinely feel it straining under that job description. The first half is strong. Frank is isolated in an apartment, dealing with PTSD, seeing visions of the people he's lost, and it plays almost like a quiet character study. Then Nucci shows up wanting revenge, and the whole thing pivots hard into brutal, ultra-violent action, the kind that rivals the best fight scenes from Born Again. Jon Bernthal is fully committed here, and honestly, he's been the definitive on-screen Punisher for years now. My issue is mostly the editing. Some of the bigger fight sequences feel choppy in a way that undercuts how good the choreography actually is. And there's a line of dialogue from Nucci that made me wince. I won't repeat it, but you'll know it when you hear it. What this really feels like is Bernthal and director Reinaldo Marcus Green making a pitch to Marvel for a full theatrical Punisher movie. And honestly, they've earned that. This character deserved his own spotlight instead of getting squeezed in ahead of someone else's. The film is The Punisher: One Last Kill. Now, my next pick genuinely surprised me because I did not expect an animated Avatar movie to hit this hard emotionally. Avatar Aang: The Last Airbender is Avatar Studios' first feature, and it picks up with Aang years after the war, now in his 20s and still carrying the weight of being the last airbender alive. The animation is the first thing you notice, and it's genuinely one of the best looking 2D animated features in years. Hand-drawn, fluid, expressive, the kind of work that reminds you what traditional animation can still do when a studio actually invests in it. Aang reunites with Katara, Sokka, Toph, and Zuko to deal with a group called the Denied, who are hunting a staff that could restore bending to non-benders. And that hunt kicks off a much more existential story about grief and legacy than the trailers let on. Where it stumbles a bit is the villains. The Denied never feels as developed as the emotional material Aang is working through, and some of the dialogue leans a little too expository for a story this mature. The climax also gets visually busy in a way that borders on overwhelming. Even with those flaws, this is a genuinely ambitious piece of animation, and it proves this franchise still has real stories left to tell. The film is Avatar Aang: The Last Airbender. Okay, War Machine is a strange one to explain, because for the first third, it plays like a completely conventional military movie. Alan Ritchson joins Ranger Academy to honor his late brother. There's a hard-nosed drill sergeant, a wisecracking recruit, all the tropes you'd expect, and honestly, none of it is particularly memorable. Then, about a third of the way in, the movie discovers a giant killer robot during a training exercise, and it becomes an entirely different film. This robot jams communications, scrambles compasses, and there's a genuinely clever nod to the water ripple moment from Jurassic Park that signals it's coming. It moves like a T-Rex, slow and lumbering, but relentless, and it's basically bulletproof, which strips away any of the usual tactics these recruits would normally rely on. Once that shift happens, the film leans all the way into it, and the violence gets genuinely graphic. Broken limbs, charred skin, the kind of gore that's almost cartoonish in how far it goes. Ritchson plays it stoic, which works well against something this over the top. The script outside the robot stuff is forgettable, but that's clearly not the point here. If you want a man versus machine movie that fully commits to its own insanity, this delivers. The film is War Machine. Now, real quick, we're a third of the way through this list, and if you're finding some picks worth adding to your watch list, hitting subscribe genuinely helps more than you think. I put these lists out regularly, and it's the easiest way to catch the next one. Like button too, if you don't mind. It tells the algorithm this is worth showing to more people. Alright, back to the list. Apex is exactly the kind of old-school survival thriller I wish we got more of. Charlize Theron plays Sasha, a former extreme sports enthusiast who sets out on a solo river expedition through the Australian wilderness, and director Baltasar Kormakur shoots the whole thing with a real appreciation for how dangerous and beautiful that landscape actually is. It's got real cliffhanger and the river wild energy, and Theron is clearly doing a lot of her own physical work here. The climbing and the white water sequences look genuinely dangerous. Here's the twist that makes it work. The real threat isn't the wilderness, it's a man. Taron Egerton plays Ben, a hunter who lures Sasha into a trap, and he's charming in exactly the way that should make you nervous. Once the cat and mouse chase starts, the power dynamic between them keeps shifting, and that back and forth is genuinely tense. The film doesn't spend much time on backstory, which some people might find thin, but I actually found it refreshing. It just throws you into survival mode and stays there. The chase does get a little repetitive in the middle stretch, that's my one real complaint. For a direct-to-streaming release, this is a genuinely well-made, tense little thriller. The film is Apex. Now I have to be honest about my next pick, because The Bluff had a lot going for it on paper and mostly squanders it. Priyanka Chopra Jonas plays Ursula, a mother defending her home on Cayman Brac in 1846 against the pirate captain played by Carl Urban, who's holding her husband hostage while hunting for hidden gold. Produced by the Russo brothers for Amazon, this had real potential. The problem is execution. The film leans hard on quippy one-liners and stylized posturing instead of building a real connection between its leads, and it shows. Chopra and Urban rarely seem to react to each other on screen, which makes even the bigger confrontations feel oddly flat. There's a single take-home invasion sequence early on that's genuinely fun, and small period details like Ursula using a conch shell show some real craft went into this somewhere. Urban clearly has fun playing the villain, all shoulder swivels and swagger, and Chopra gets some decent one-liners. But the writing leans on those quips so hard, it ends up overshadowing what could have been a much stronger performance from her. This one plays like an expensive fan fiction adaptation more than a fully realized movie, and it's clearly setting up a sequel. The film is The Bluff. Enola Holmes 3 is exactly the kind of comfort watch this franchise has built its reputation on. Millie Bobby Brown returns as Enola, now running her own detective agency and preparing to marry Tex Barry in Malta, right up until Dr. Watson tells her Sherlock has been kidnapped, and those wedding plans get derailed fast. What makes this franchise work is Brown. She's fearless and fully committed, and the direct-to-camera address she does throughout gives the whole thing real personality. The mystery itself is genuinely well put together. Ciphers, chases, explosions courtesy of her mother, and it finds room to touch on bigger themes like feminism and colonialism without getting heavy-handed about it. The cast is clearly enjoying themselves too. Henry Cavill as Sherlock, Helena Bonham Carter chewing scenery as Eudora, and the Victorian production design does a lot of heavy lifting to sell the world. Is it reinventing anything? No, but it's a genuinely fun, clever mystery with real heart behind it, and it leaves the door wide open for a fourth installment. The film is Enola Holmes 3. Now, The Rip might be the biggest surprise on this entire list, because Netflix action movies have trained me to expect disappointment, and this one just doesn't deliver that. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck play world-weary Miami cops on an elite task force that specializes in seizing, or quote-unquote ripping, cash from criminal operations. And when a routine raid turns up $20 million instead of the expected amount, the whole team starts turning on each other. Joe Carnahan directs this with real control, twisty, tense, and constantly making you question who's actually corrupt, which keeps the whole thing moving. Damon plays exhausted and morally compromised in a way that genuinely works, and the supporting cast, including Kyle Chandler as a DEA agent circling the team, feels lived in rather than decorative. It's not quite Carnahan's best work, the cast doesn't hit the same heights as some of his earlier collaborations, but it's close enough that I never once checked the time, which for a Netflix original these days is genuinely rare. This is proof Netflix can still make a real grown-up crime thriller when it actually commits to one. The film is The Rip.
This is confusing.
Next, Mike and Nick and Alice has maybe the most chaotic title of the year, and somehow the movie earns it. This is an 80s-flavored sci-fi comedy from writer-director Ben David Grabinski that starts as a love triangle revenge thriller, and then time travel gets involved. And from there, it fully commits to being unhinged. Crime lords, a cannibalistic assassin casually wandering through, all of it playing out with real Back to the Future energy. Vince Vaughn plays two versions of the same character, present day and a future version who's traveled back to fix a mistake. And it's genuinely his best work in years. There's real nuance in how he plays regret and shame across both versions. James Marsden holds his own as Quick Draw Mike, but make no mistake, this is Vaughn's showcase. The supporting cast of, honestly, total idiots somehow stays funny without ever tipping into full parody, which is a much harder balance than it sounds. The action is a genuine standout too. The climax has choreography that got favorably compared to John Woo, which is not a comparison you throw around lightly. If you can get past the title, this is a genuinely fun, ambitious little movie. The film is Mike and Nick and Alice.
Let's not forget, I'm your boss. You work for me.
We're not in the office anymore, Bradley.
Now, Send Help is Sam Raimi doing exactly what Sam Raimi does best. Gross, funny, and unpredictable in the best way. Rachel McAdams plays Linda, an overly cheerful office manager who gets passed over for a promotion. And through a series of increasingly unfortunate events involving a company plane crash, ends up stranded on a deserted island with the guy who screwed her over, played by Dylan O'Brien. What starts out as a pretty sharp satire of workplace power dynamics turns into full-blown survival horror comedy once they're stranded, and the way their roles reverse, who's actually capable, who's completely useless, is genuinely satisfying to watch play out. There's projectile vomiting, there's a lot of blood, and there's at least one jump scare that got me even though I knew it was coming. McAdams gets to be quietly unsettling in a way she doesn't often get to play. And O'Brien's comedic timing, especially in the moments where his character thinks nobody's watching, is genuinely underused elsewhere in his career. It's dark, it's gory, and it earns both. The film is Send Help.
Are any of you even listening to me?
My last pick might be the smartest movie on this whole list. Good luck, have fun, don't die. Gore Verbinski directs this like a Looney Tunes cartoon that's secretly terrified of your phone. And Sam Rockwell plays an unnamed man who walks into an LA diner insisting the apocalypse is happening right now and everyone needs to leave with him immediately. He's basically an anti-Terminator. He's lived through this scenario before, and he can reset the clock if things go wrong, which is enough to convince a handful of strangers to actually follow him. What makes this one stand out is the backstories. Teachers overwhelmed by classroom technology, a grieving mother offered a chance to reconnect with her son through AI, a woman watching her boyfriend disappear into a virtual world. None of it is subtle, but it's genuinely effective, and it lands as an uncomfortably relevant snapshot of exactly where we are with AI right now. Rockwell is magnetic in this, chaotic in exactly the right way, and Verbinski's manic energy keeps the episodic structure from ever getting too bleak, even when the material touches on some genuinely heavy stuff. This is a funny, weirdly touching movie about what AI actually costs us. The film is Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die. Now, next time, we're staying in crime territory, because Netflix gets a lot of hate for its library, but buried under all that algorithm bait is a genuinely great run of crime movies most people just scroll past. I'm talking 10 picks, everything from quiet Taylor Sheridan-style dramas, all the way to an absolutely unhinged Zack Snyder zombie heist movie. Make sure you're subscribed so it lands in your feed. If you got value out of this one, hitting like genuinely helps more than you'd think. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next one.